We're on the chapter called The Master and Vijay Goswami, and they are talking about a realized soul looking at a woman and not having any thought of her as a woman, and seeing everyone as an aspect of the Divine Mother. So to Vijay, he says to Vijay, "Come here now and then. I like to see you very much." Vijay, "I have to do my various duties in the Brahmo Samaj. That is why I can't always come here. But I shall visit you whenever I find it possible." The Master to Vijay, "The task of a religious teacher is indeed difficult. One cannot teach men without a direct command from God. People won't listen to you if you teach without such authority. Such teaching has no force behind it. One must first of all attain God through spiritual discipline or some other means. Thus, armed with authority from God, you can deliver lectures. After receiving the command from God, one can be a teacher and give lectures anywhere. He who receives authority from God also receives power from him. Only then can he perform the difficult task of a teacher. An insignificant tenant was once engaged in a lawsuit with a big landlord. People realized that there was a powerful man behind that tenant. Perhaps another big landlord was directing the case from behind. Man is an insignificant creature. He cannot fulfill the difficult task of a teacher without receiving power direct from God." Vijay, "Don't the teachings of the Brahmo Samaj bring men salvation?" Master, "How is it ever possible for one man to liberate another from the bondage of this world?" What is this? Oh, I see. You're sending me something.
I didn't know it would ring so loudly, Swami. I'm sure that's my, and I thought you would have muted all that for the class. I'm so sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. No worries. Yeah, anyway, moving on. Don't the teachings of the Brahmo Samaj bring men salvation? Master, how is it ever possible for one man to liberate another from the bondage of the world? God alone, the creator of this world bewitching Maya, can save men from Maya. There is no other refuge but that great teacher, Satchitananda. How is it ever possible for men who have not realized God or received his command, and who are not strengthened with divine strength, to save others from this prison house of the world? One day, I was passing the Panchavati on my way to the pine grove. I heard a bullfrog croaking. I thought it must have been seized by a snake. After some time, as I was coming back, I could still hear its terrified croaking. I looked to see what was the matter and found that a water snake had seized it. The snake could neither swallow it nor give it up. So there was no end to the frog's suffering. I thought that it had been seized by a cobra. It would have been silenced after 3 croaks at the most. As it was only a water snake, both of them had to go through this agony. A man's ego is destroyed after 3 croaks, as it were, if he gets into the clutches of a real teacher. But if the teacher is an unripe one, then both the teacher and the disciple undergo endless suffering. The disciple cannot get rid of either of his ego or of the shackles of the world. If a disciple falls into the clutches of an incompetent teacher, he doesn't attain liberation. And it's interesting on this point here, when we take initiation from someone in the order's ideal is that all of our guru is Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Vivekananda, depending on our ideal at the time. And so all of us, our guru is Thakur himself, our teacher. And so knowing that and thinking that way kind of bypasses this sort of concern. So we don't have to get worried like, oh goodness, is this Swami good enough, or should I go to that Swami and take initiation from him? In the ideal of the order of the Ramakrishna, it's that he is everybody's guru, and that the faces of your guru are just the many faces of Thakur. And so you can rest assured in that. I don't want anybody starting to wonder, oh goodness, do I have a water snake or a cobra for a guru? We've all got the cobra. No worries. Sir, why are we bound like this? Why don't we see God? Master, Maya is nothing but the egotism of the embodied soul. This egotism has covered everything like a veil. All troubles come to an end when the ego dies. If, by the grace of God, a man but once realizes that he is not the doer, then he at once becomes a Jivan Mukta. Though living in the body, he is liberated. He has nothing else to fear. This Maya, that is to say, the ego, is like a cloud. So you see there, Ramakrishna is equating directly there as synonyms, Maya and ego. Your ego is the veil that blocks seeing God. You know, if it wasn't for the ego, if it wasn't for the sense of agency that we have, this identity with body and mind, we would be seeing only God everywhere. We would have no objects of sense in front of us. You know, just we would look at that cluster of grapes and we would see 1,000 tiny Krishnas in it. We wouldn't see grapes at all. And so it's our ego. Ego and Maya are the same thing. Your ego is the story that connects one unrelated moment to another. You know, Sri Nisargadatta says that this world is created anew every moment, and that each creation is utterly different from the previous. But your mind weaves a story to link them together. And that story is your ego. That story is your Maya. And it's what you have to live out. So he's saying here that if by the grace of man, if by the grace of God, a man but once realizes that he's not the doer, then he becomes a Jivan Mukta. And he says that right after saying that all troubles come to an end with the death of the ego. You see, we know that the death of the ego is the absence of a past, because we know that from Jnana Yoga that the ego is composed entirely of the past. It's out of the past that the ego grabs all of its material for its identity, and that the waves of the mind, Shakti, the creative force of the mind, is what sustains that story. What continues, what arranges the bricks of the ego, as it were. And so this notion that we're experimenting with, that Ili Chiaro really brings to the forefront in his Gyani writings, is that the death of the ego and the stillness of the mind are the same. When the mind stills, the ego dies, because the mind contains all of the thoughts of the past that the ego uses to construct its identity, itself. And so the silence of the mind is the equivalent of living purely in the moment, of being fully present, of being fully mindful. And it's in that full presence that we become aware of the infinity of intelligence that is within us, that is then spontaneously available, so that in each moment, a realized soul always responds perfectly to the moment. That's because there's no ego, no attachments from the past messing with his vision, throwing off his ability to see clearly by leaving behind the ideas of imbalance and need and desire that all come from an egoistic identity. This Maya, that is to say, the ego, is like a cloud. The sun cannot be seen on account of a thin patch of cloud. When that disappears, one sees the sun. If by the grace of the Guru one's ego vanishes, then one sees God. Yeah, so these thoughts of me and mine are the only thing that are preventing you from seeing God. So it's and it's odd, you know, 'cause the intensity of our selfishness really escapes our notice most of the time. But it's really quite overwhelming when you sit and think that as an egoistic self, everything in creation is related to you. that this ego forces you to see everything, not in itself, not as itself, but as it relates to you. And it puts you at the center of your universe. And while you're standing in the center of the universe, you can't see God, because God in one sense, God is the center of the universe. So you're standing on him. You're sitting in his chair on his lap, and you can't see him. So you're sitting there in the lap of God looking around. Where is he? That's that's the problem of ego. And so all of our practices, truly all of the practices and all of the paths, are meant for that one singular thing: the removal of ego, the death of ego, of the thought of me and mine, because that's what sets us free. And of course, it's extremely difficult to do. And that's not accidental either, because it's actually impossible without the grace of the beloved. That last egoistic activity of removing the last straw from your back of your bondage, the last straw of your bondage, who can do that? If when the ego dies, if that straw comes off and the ego's dead, the ego cannot remove that last straw, because he doesn't survive long enough to remove it. So it has to be done by the divine spirit, by the universal self, the true self, and that is grace. And so that it is all by grace that we reach that final state, that final knowledge of God as one without a second. The sun cannot be seen on account of a thin patch of cloud. When that disappears, one sees the sun. If by the grace of the Guru one's ego vanishes, then one sees God. Rama, who is God himself, was only 2.5 cubits ahead of Lakshmana, but Lakshmana couldn't see him because Sita stood between them. Lakshmana may be compared to the jiva, to the soul, and Sita to Maya, the ego. Man cannot see God on account of the barrier of Maya. Just look, I am creating a barrier in front of my face with this towel. Now you can't see me, even though I am so near. Likewise, God is the nearest of all, but we cannot see him on account of this covering of Maya, on account of this ego covering. And so that's a cool, of course, the lesson is there to show us of the blocking nature of the ego, but it also can be there to give you reassurance of the nearness of the beloved, that it's just a towel's thickness away to your realization. That God is so present with you always. And really, if you just keep your mind on that reality, the fact that God is closer to you than your neck, that's one of the things that scripture says. God is closer than your neck. And then also that beautiful description that Thakur does with the anklets on an ant, that God is so near that he can hear the jingling of the anklet on an ant. And so both of those descriptions of God's nearness are things to keep in mind, because God, the thought of God, the presence of the divine, is the antidote to the ego and its construction. And in that presence, we become the servant of the beloved, or we become the lover of the beloved, or the child of the beloved, any of those 5 relationships. And through those 5 relationships, we come to know love. That's how we come to know God, is that through that relationship with the personal God, love manifests. And that love makes us aware of the moment as it arises from within, from our own nature. And we come to see, we get absorbed, both we, the devotee, and our concept of God, both get absorbed into that love, that prema, that manifests when God is thought of, when God is meditated on. And so that eliminates or dissolves ego in the most beautiful way, using love as the dissolver.
Swami.
Yes.
So it's just a matter of time, karma being burnt, and grace before that.
It's not a matter of time. nor a matter of grace, nor a matter of karma.
My fourth emergence just happens and it's done.
Yes.
Because it's right there. It is this. It is this.
Yes,
So,
yes. Nothing will change here. Like Mother says, what happens when you realize God? Do you grow horns? No. You suddenly see. It's like when you look at those pictures, where they've got the faces that look like two lampshades. But if you look at it one way, you see lampshades. If you look at it longer, you see, if you reverse the white space with the black space, it turns into a face.
Yeah.
And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You always see, oh, there it is, the face and the lamps. But before you see the two, you can only see one. And you're sitting there trying to figure out, where's the face? Where's the face? And then all of a sudden it appears. Realization is like that. Nothing changed in the picture. Nothing changes in you, really. It's just an understanding of you that changes. And so everything changes because you are the center of your world. And when that identity switches, what's that?
So if it seems as though the knowledge has seeped into the core because you found it came from inside of you, and let's say you have to tend to matters of the mind and the heart on a just on a healing level, but all you see is that jnana and that bhakti, but you have to go do that for a little while. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
And that time, karma, and grace.
Yeah, well, I say that it's not a matter of any of those because it can happen at any moment, regardless of any of those. Of course, it's always going to be through grace.
Yeah.
So grace is a given. Grace surrounds you. Grace, the fact that you can grow, the fact that you can see that you need to do something, or the fact that you can turn away from something, that you can renounce or discern, both of those are rooted in grace. Without grace, you just become the addict that can't get out of the bondage. You just sit there and loop. That's what a world with no grace is. But grace is all around us. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we develop. And that's how all of us are growing and developing, regardless of whether we have any relationship in our mind with the divine at all. It's like grace is everywhere present, and it's working on everyone, whether they're knowledgeable of it or not. It's everywhere around. But nothing is necessary because actually it's only the unreal.
Yeah.
It's only the unreal that we've believed in and that we count on, that we try and manipulate and use for our satisfaction. We live in the dream. Well, what's necessary for the dream to end? Just waking up is all, and that will happen in its time. But the thing about it is, enjoy God now.
Yeah.
Why listen to the mind tell you that God is not nearby, that you're the doer? Why listen to that? The mind may say it, and we may believe it, but it's still not the reality.
Nope.
So through faith, and this is what faith is accepting what we have been told is real, even though it doesn't appear to be real to us. And so in that faith, we enjoy God. I sit down for meditation, and I'm very clearly in my room here, and I'm a terrible meditator, and all of the things are in the way. But when I sit there in my practice, I disallow the mind from telling me what we need to do or how it should be done. And I just immediately go straight to love. I go straight to the notion that I am embraced by an infinite, immortal, unconditioned love. And that unconditioned means that nothing has to change right now for me to enjoy God. Nothing has to be done. I can assume God's presence. I can assume God's grace. I can assume God's love. And so I do. And I just enjoy it, regardless of whether I've earned it, or whether I'm seeing it or experiencing it, or whether I'm this, that, or the other. It's faith. Faith is everything.
Yeah.
Both faith and mind. Mind is everything. Mind's the container of everything. But in it, don't wait for your realization to enjoy God. Let the realization come when it comes.
Yeah.
You enjoy God anyway.
Yeah, it's already done. It's just I got a little anxious because sometimes it's like, all right.
Yeah.
I see you. Come on. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you
No,
so much.
for sure. For sure. Yeah, always keep our focus on the presence of God, not on our weaknesses and the length of our journey and the height of our failures. Those things are not our business. Those are Mother's business, and she's taking care of all of that. Ours is just staying close to Ma. That's our only requirement. Stay close to Ma, and don't forget it. Regardless of what else the mind is feeding you, you short circuit the mind by knowing that the truth is you are in the lap of the Divine Mother, enjoying an infinite love, and that realization is not a thing to be worried about or even longed for or looked for, right? It will happen. It's like death, we keep it in our mind, we know it's going to happen, and we use it to help with our discernment and our renunciation, but we don't fret over it. It's just a fact of life. And so our realization is the same. It's just a fact of life. It will come, but for us, we enjoy sitting in Thakur's room with the Divine Mother and just drinking in these beautiful truths from the scriptures and reading each other as holy company and enjoying God everywhere on the journey.
Thank you.
Yes. The Jiva, which is the soul, the Jiva is nothing but the embodiment of Satchitananda. But since Maya, or ego, has created various upadhis, he has forgotten his real self. Each upadhi changes a man's nature. If he wears a fine black bordered cloth, you will at once find him humming Nidhu Babu's love songs. Then playing cards and a walking stick will follow. If even a sickly man puts on high boots, he begins to whistle and climb the stairs like the Englishman, jumping from step to step. If a man but holds a pen in his hand, he scribbles on any paper he can get hold of. That's the power of the pen, right? So these upadhis, these identities, these thoughts that we've attached to, that we've collected and called ourself, identified ourself by them, they cause us to dance in a particular way. If you decide that anything. It's like I find, being aware of age, being in the monastery. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. It's hard for me when it's surprising to me when I look in the mirror and begin to realize that I'm almost 60 years old. That's quite shocking to me because I'm not 60. I've never been 60, and so how is this? I've never been an old person. Why am I seeing an old person now? And I find that if you're able to just ignore that mirror and ignore everything else externally that's tells you what age you are, you don't have an age. You don't have an age. You have always been you. It's the body that has an age. And if you allow yourself to remain free of that age, which I do the opposite, but if you allow yourself to forget that age, you won't feel that age, And when you understand your relationship with the body, that you're not the body, and that age belongs to the body, it turns into kind of a funny little joke, actually, I find, to find new things, these new things that are happening to the body as it ages, it's a wonder. It's kind of goofy to watch them, and to see it all happen in front of you without feeling it, because it's not you. It's not what you are. And so let go of these identities, let go of the smallness. Always try and expand your mind, in your meditation, in the presence of God. God, that light in your heart, that light of consciousness, that light of love, let it expand in you, and let yourself expand, bigger than the body, bigger than the mind, bigger than your ideas, just beyond what you're feeling and thinking. The best way to do that is just sending out positive thoughts and prayers for everybody that you pass, for everybody that you're around. Instead of letting the mind sit idle, think good thoughts, send them out with the light of the divine that's within you, and expand. All expansion is life. All contraction, Vivekananda says, is death. So always think big, always think beautiful, always think wonderful, and hold that positivity in your mind. Don't let the ego break you down. Don't let your seeming thoughts and weaknesses and struggles narrow your experience of God. In the end, they have nothing to do with it. It's grace that opens the door to the beloved. And so don't get caught up in the stuff, in the science, in the homework. Keep your eyes on the beloved, and keep everything else away. Money is also a great upadi. Oh boy, can I tell you that? Money will make you feel like you're entitled, like nobody's business. I remember when I got my first professional job out of college and tripled my salary overnight, and I started shopping at Nordstrom's, and I got Corky was my color consultant. And I would call Corky and I'd say, Corky, I need a sweater for a dinner party tonight. Can I come over at 3 today? Make an appointment. And I'd go, and my friend would go with me, and they'd sit my friend in a nice overstuffed chair and give him a glass of wine. And I would go into the dressing room, and they'd have like 3 or 4 outfits picked out for me. And oh my God, I can tell you, I thought I deserved all of that. I was this punky little yuppie, who stumbled into some money. And it took me a while to realize what was happening to me. How entitled we become, and how we actually begin to think ourselves better than others. I deserve to be rich. I deserve to have comfort. I deserve to sit in first class. I deserve. And, if it goes to the nth degree, we become hideous, truly hideous demons that somehow think that our advantage belongs to us, and we deserve that, and we act from that position. We look down on others. We don't want to touch dirty people. We don't want to sit next to different types of people on the bus, or if we're ever on the bus. Goodness gracious, I don't get on the bus. That's the big thing in LA. In LA, nobody, you don't public transport. No, only the poor take public transport. We don't take public transport. And that's what upadis do. Upadis feed you a support to your wrong ideas about yourself and make them seem real. The possession, yes?
So, the traffic is so bad in LA that they do need public transport rather, right?
Yeah, but even during rush hour, you can walk down into the subway station and get right on the train and sit down. Nobody takes the subway in LA. It's a very weird thing because it's a nice system. They actually have a nice subway system that can get you around town quite easily. Nobody takes it. They're all up in traffic on the 101. The possession of money makes such a difference in a man. He is no longer the same person. A Brahmin used to frequent the temple garden. Outwardly, he was very modest. One day I went to Konagar with Hriday. No sooner did we get off the boat than we noticed the Brahmin seated on the bank of the Ganges. We thought he had been enjoying the fresh air. Looking at us, he said, "Hello there, priest. How do you do?" I marked his tone, and I said to Hriday, "This man must have gotten some money." That's why he's talking to me that way, because that's a very casual way of talking to a guru, talking to a holy man. Hey there, priest, how you doing? And so that's exactly what money does to you. It gives you a false sense of elevation, a false sense of entitlement. You don't respect others properly, you know. A frog had a rupee, which he kept in his hole. One day, an elephant was going over the hole, and the frog, coming out in a fit of anger, raised his foot as if to kick the elephant and said, "How dare you walk over my head?" Such is the pride that money begets. So, if you're a wealthy person, be careful. If you think you deserve that wealth, be more careful. If you use that wealth only for your own enjoyment, be more than careful. You're hanging off the edge of a very, very long cliff. You know, our money is meant to take care of ours and our family needs. Anything beyond that we have doesn't mean we should get bigger and better things. It means we begin to support the holy people around us first, and then the society around us. So as a householder, your extra money is your responsibility to support the society, to build up the society, you know. And so use your money wisely, and make sure that you understand that it is an upadi, that it can build up and maintain and support wrong ideas of yourself, that you will find will increase your ego and will make God seem farther and farther away, although God is never far away. So this is the result of money. And the fact that he's pulling money out as a particular here means that he knows this is one of the stronger upadis. This is one of the more delusive things in our life. One can get rid of the ego after the attainment of knowledge. The attainment of knowledge is knowing that you are not the body and you are not the mind. And by removing the body and mind from the center of your world, everything changes. Everything will look differently when that happens. So one can get rid of the ego only after the attainment of knowledge. On attaining knowledge, one goes into samadhi and the ego disappears, but it is very difficult to obtain such knowledge. Yeah, we can't do it casually, unfortunately. You know, it really does take an absorbed heart and an absorbed mind, someone who's really tired, worn out by the upadis, worn out by the vrittis in the mind, worn out by this constant chasing and never finding thing that the world presents to us constantly. And so when we tire of that, when we've run that course, when we've had all of our desires and seen the nature of desire, realize that we will always be hungry as long as we're chasing things for the body mind that will never be fulfilled. When we come to that knowledge and we sit down out of breath, tired, worn out from this effort, and we turn to Mother and say, "I don't know what else to do, Ma. Please come and get me." You know, at that point, with that level of earnestness, Mother comes and she picks you up. It is said in the Vedas that a man experiences samadhi when his mind ascends to the seventh plane. The ego can disappear only when one goes into samadhi. Where does the mind of a man ordinarily dwell? In the first three planes. These are the organs of evacuation and generation, and at the navel. When a man is immersed only in worldliness, attached to woman and gold, to lust and greed, a man sees the light of God when his mind dwells in the plane of the heart. He sees that light and exclaims, "Ah, what is this? What is this?" The next plane is at the throat. When the mind dwells there, he likes to hear and talk only of God. When the mind ascends to the next plane, in the forehead, between the eyebrows, he sees the form of Satchit Ananda and desires to touch and embrace it, but he is unable to do so. It is like a light from in a lantern, which you can see, but you cannot touch. You feel as if you were touching the light, but in reality you are not. When the mind reaches the seventh plane, then the ego vanishes completely and the man goes into samadhi. Vijay, What does a man see when he attains this knowledge of Brahman after reaching the seventh plane? The master. What happens when the mind reaches the seventh plane? It cannot be described. Once a boat enters the black waters of the ocean, it does not return. Nobody knows what happens to the boat after that. Therefore, the boat cannot give us any information about the ocean. Once a salt doll went to measure the depth of the ocean. No sooner did it enter the water than it melted. Now, who could tell how deep the ocean was? That which could have told about the depth had melted. Reaching the seventh plane, the mind is annihilated. Man goes into samadhi. What he feels then cannot be described in words. Yes. Why is that? Well, because he's outside of time, first of all. All sentences run through time, subject, object, verb, and without time, there's no verb. Without an ego, there's no subject, object. So how is anything going to be said, and who's going to say it? Because the death of the ego is that point of particular that you've given your name to. And when that point of particular is removed, who's talking to who? You are part of the universal then. Nobody can tell you. There's nothing left to tell you anything. You have become part of the sleeper, no longer the dreamed. So that's why words can't describe God, because he's not a cause or an effect. He's not in time, space, or causation. He's the container of all of that. And so there is no means for the mind to be able to capture God, to know God. God is pure mind. God is mind without particular, without ego, free of thought, clear mind. Or as the Buddhists say, big mind. The eye that makes one a worldly person and attaches one to woman in gold is the wicked eye. The intervention of this ego creates the difference between jiva and atman. It's what attaches the jiva to a soul. The jiva to a body. So it becomes the embodied soul, the embodied jiva. So we become, remember I said, we talked about the difference between jiva and atman. That atman is like the big dishcloth. And when you lay the dishcloth over your upturned hand, and you put a little rubber band around the dishcloth over the top of each of your fingers, suddenly you've got 5 little nipples on your dishcloth. Those are the jiva. That's the embodied soul. But the atman is the cloth. And if you were to pull the cloth and all the little rubber bands pop off, you're left with atman. And jiva there's no embodied jiva at that point. So you see there's one soul that seems like many souls because it has been attached to the idea of being a body or being a mind. And that little rubber band of attachment holds us to that particular. And so our experience of being is only as big as the tip of our finger. It's a small experience, a very vulnerable experience. But the real experience is the fact that we are part of everything, that we are the whole, the entirety. And so the soul is no longer bound to a particular, to a smallness. The intervention of this ego creates the difference between jiva and atman. Water appears to be divided into 2 parts if one puts a stick across it, but in reality, there's only one water. It appears as 2 on account of the stick. The I is the stick. Remove the stick, and there remains only one water as before. Right? So it's just an artificial division. There really is just water. And so this notion of being this body and this mind is just a delusion. You are not this body or this mind, and no one else in the dream is their body or their mind either. All of you are elements of the sleeper, the mind that is conjuring you, right? And even the man who's sleeping, believes himself to be a character in the dream, or the woman that's sleeping, the person that's sleeping. They believe themselves to be the person in the dream, and they believe themselves to be the body in the dream. And they're composed of the memories that the make-believe body in the make-believe person in the dream contains. And all of those are a subset of his own memories, which he has completely forgotten. The memories of the sleeper do not enter the dream. The reality of the sleeper doesn't enter into the dream. Only the dream creates its own reality, creates its own story, creates its own people. And the one Atman, the one Jiva, the sleeping Jiva, as it were, becomes every character in that dream. Not just the characters, becomes all of the inanimate things as well. There is nothing in that dream that is not composed of the mind stuff of the sleeper. So remove the stick, remove the ego, and you will see a unity. You'll see the entire dream made of mind stuff, and you'll instantly know the dreamer. Now, what is this wicked I? It is the ego that says, what? Don't they know me? I have so much money. Who's wealthier than I am? If a thief robs such a man of only 10 rupees, first of all, he wrings the money out of the thief. Then he gives him a good beating. But the matter doesn't end there. The thief is handed over to the police and eventually sent to jail. The wicked I says, what? Doesn't that rogue know whom he has robbed? To steal my 10 rupees? How dare he? I do that a little too well, I'm afraid. Because I know those thoughts, I've suffered that level of a horrible self-infatuation. And so that's the stick that's dividing the world for you. It's the thing that has hidden your beloved, your most precious thing from you. Vijay, if without destroying the I, a man cannot get rid of attachment to the world and consequently cannot experience samadhi, then it would be wise for him to follow the path of Brahmagyana to attain samadhi. If the I what's that? If the I persists in the path of devotion, then one should rather choose the path of knowledge. All right, so here we're getting down to the age-old argument. Should I be a Gyani or should I be a Bhakta? Master, it is true that one or two can get rid of the I through samadhi, but these cases, they're very rare. You may indulge in thousands of reasonings, but still this I comes back. You may cut the peepal tree to the very root today, but you will notice a sprout springing up tomorrow. Therefore, if the I must remain, let the rascal remain as the servant I. As long as you live, you should say, O God, you are the master and I am your servant. The I that feels I am the servant of God, I am his devotee, does not injure one. Sweet things cause acidity of the stomach, no doubt, but sugar candy is an exception. So you see, he's giving us a wonderful kind of, I don't know what, a Band-Aid for our condition. Because yes, one or two people can transcend this body-mind idea through jnana, through knowledge and discernment alone. But that's a hero's effort. And, it takes an immense amount of focus and concentration and an environment of solitude for that to be able to happen in. And a party of many supporters who come and support you in that endeavor also to keep you fed and and taken care of so that you don't have to move your mind in worldly circles. But he says, that if you are a devotee of God, if you just make this sense of I, this you, this ego self, just hook it to God's wagon. See yourself as the servant of God, as the lover of God, as the partner of God, as the friend of God, and develop that relationship. He says that will ripen your I. That ego is not harmful to you because it will take a very small effort of grace to wipe it out of the way if you have ripened it as the servant of God, which means that you've done the same discernment. You know, that's how you move your servant self from ego to God. You stop taking care of your own desires, or focusing on your own wants and needs, hopes and dreams, and you focus on this moment of love that is within you. And by removing the stories of ego, you sit in that companionship with God. And the Thakur says the same thing happens, that the ego dies a slow death, but the ego is not harmful if it's being trained as a servant of God, as a lover of God. So for us, the fastest and the easiest way to come to our realization is through just enjoying this love of God, enjoying this presence of God, and being mindful of it always. That awareness of awareness cleans the heart. The presence of God cleans the heart. The path of knowledge is very difficult. One cannot obtain knowledge unless one gets rid of the feeling that one is the body. In the Kali Yuga, the life of a man is centered on food. He cannot get rid of the feeling that he is the body and the ego. Therefore, the path of devotion is prescribed for this cycle. This is an easy path. You will attain God if you sing his name and glories and pray to him with a longing heart. There is not the least doubt about it. All right. There's one of those things that we should definitely cut out and hang on the wall. This is a huge promise to you, a huge promise to us from the beloved himself. You will attain God if you sing his name and glories, if you pray to him with a longing heart. There is not the least doubt about it, right? So keep your mind on the beloved and let everything else be God's problem. Let go of the story that way. Give it to God. Give your realization to God. Give your whole effort to realize him to him. And you forget about it. Forget about those things that are tied to your individuality. And just keep your mind on the dance. Keep your mind on not stepping on God's foot as he dances with you. That's what it is, to live in this world and to know God. You just keep your mind on the company of the beloved and go forward, and let God take care of your weaknesses, and let God take care of the mess you make, and let God clean all of that up, right? That's how it happens. This always makes me remember the time my friend Klausie, when I was 6 years old or something, he lived on a farm that was on the other side of a pasture that was behind my house. And so anytime we'd go back and forth across the pasture, being good little German boys at the time, we found it necessary to jump from cow plop to cow plop because, of course, the grass was lava and we couldn't touch the grass. We had to go from my house to his house without touching the grass. So we jumped from one dried cow plop to another. But I made the mistake one day of misjudging a cow plop to be dry when it was fresh. And so I jumped over to it, and my foot slipped out from under me, and I sat right there in a nice fresh cow plop. So I was covered in this slimy cow poop all the way down my pant leg and partway up my shirt in the back. And I was crying, and I was walking up to my house, walking on the lava because I didn't care anymore. Walking up to my house, and my mother comes out on the back porch, and she sees me, and she sees what's happened. She's like, "Oh, get up here, get up here." And I go up there, and she, I'm 6 years old. She takes all my clothes off on the back porch. I'm mortified. I'm right there in front of the whole town, and she pulls out the garden hose and just hoses me down from the top to bottom, hoses me down, hoses off the clothes on the thing, and then gets me a towel and takes care of me. This is what Mother's talking about right here. This is what Mother is talking about. You know, it's like you need to realize when you grabbed onto your ego, you sat right square down in the middle of that cow plop. Mother sees the trouble. You don't have to go up and wash your clothes. You don't have to go up and take things off. You don't have to fix it and put them in the dryer and fold them and get you something clean. You just go to mother, and mother will take your clothes off on the porch in front of everybody and hose you down, which helps remove your ego in an incredible way, I can tell you, and take care of the problem and clean you up and get you ready and bring you home. This is what we're really doing in spiritual life, you know. So go to mother with all these troubles. You just have the longing to know the divine, you know. Let mother get rid of the cow manure that you're sitting in, called the ego. Let her clean up your clothes that you've messed up. Let her do the work. She's your mother. That's what she does. And she loves you in that. So this is our path to the beloved as bhaktis. Just to love and let God do the magic. All we do is spend our time with him, with her. All we do is keep our mind in her company. Always just thinking about love and trying to understand how it's possible to have an unconditioned love. How is it possible to have an infinite grace and infinite mercy? You will attain God if you sing his name and glories and pray to him with a longing heart. There is not the least doubt about it. Suppose you draw a line on the surface of the water with a bamboo stick. The water appears to be divided into two parts, but the line doesn't remain for any length of time. The servant eye, or the devotee eye, or the child eye, is only a line drawn with the ego and is not real. So see, it doesn't go deep. If you leave that ego without God, then it continues to feed itself, and that line gets established in the water. It gets tied down, it gets anchored down, it gets more and more pronounced. But by having our eye tied to the company of the beloved, to the divine, it keeps it from becoming chronic. And it's just like drawing a line on the water with your finger. It lasts for a second, but it goes away. And that's what we do. We keep the more we become aware of the presence of God, the more we become aware of that relationship and the continuity of it always in every moment, that will change our chronic condition to just a line on the water. And then when the body drops off, we enjoy our bliss. Vijay to the master. Sir, you ask us to renounce the wicked eye. Is there any harm in the servant eye? Master, the servant eye, that is, the feeling I am the servant of God, I am a devotee of God, does not injure one. On the contrary, it helps one to realize God. All right, so it turns the whole dynamic around. The ego, which has been trained to be identified with the presence of God, with the love of God, actually does the work. It becomes identified with the divine and ripens. And it doesn't injure us. It's not a problem to have a sense of self if that sense of self is a devotee of the beloved, is a companion of the beloved. And so we get to enjoy sugar. We don't have to be sugar at the moment. That can come later if we want it. All right, it's 8 o'clock already. Is there a question or a comment on this?
I guess I would like to share.
Good. Yes, please.
I'm getting to really know Thakur and Ma personally, and just I'm really falling in love with them. And I just wanted to, since I enjoy playing with God, the thought or vision of Thakur painting a self-portrait, right?
Mm,
Screen right here. And it is self-evidently beautiful and powerful and liberating, and just, it makes perfect sense.
mm. Yes, that that is the fruit of the spirit right there. That is,
Uh-huh.
you know,
I'll share
when
my fruit.
what's that?
I will share my fruit.
Yes. You're the fruit cake of the Divine Mother.
I know. Thank you.
Yes. You're the fruit cake of the beloved Mother. Indeed, yes. Become aware of this constant companion of pure love. That is the thing. And then your life becomes a story that describes God. Your life becomes a story that describes the beloved. You know, when the ego is brought into its proper relationship with body, mind, and set under the hand of the beloved, then your life becomes a story of God, becomes a scripture, actually, which is why Holy Company is valuable. Because if we become holy, we become scripture to each other. We become helps and reminders of truth to each other.
Every square is like a personality of Thakur. So this is Thakur on my screen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely true. Every life is a story of love. You take every life and add it together, and you get a much closer picture to infinite love. But of course, you can't ever have infinite love manifested through particulars. But by picking the bouquet of the entire world, every life, and know that every life is a story of love, no matter what the condition of that life is, it's a story of love. Even if it's lost in worldliness, it's love for the objects of the world that are creating that life. So it's still love, it's still rooted in God, but without the knowledge of that being God, the life will have a lot of suffering in it, but it's still a life that tells of love, that tells of the divine. Even the suffering in that life tells of the love of God, because it's the wrong thinking that gets removed through the suffering. So every life is a story of love, a story of God. And we're just trying to get the eyes to see it so that we can enjoy every life as the company of the beloved. So, all right, very good. Then be well.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy,
Thank you.
enjoy the divine. And I'll see you Thursday.
Thank
Thank
you, Swami.
Good
Thank
night.
you.